it's a good day in Jonesboro, Arkansas. I'm Roy Ockert, and I'll be your host for this edition of Let's Talk Jonesboro. Our guest today is Jonesboro's Chief of Police, Rick Elliot. Rick has been chief since September of 2014,
That's
just
correct.
a little over a year. Has about 35 years of law enforcement experience. Started with as a reserve officer here in 1979,
Yes,
and went to Blytheville for a while. Decided Jonesboro was better, and came back here in '92, and you've been here ever since. So,
right.
Chief, let's talk about the incident last week at Arkansas State University. It was one of those things that you prepare for, but you hope never happens, and it really came out pretty good. So.
Well, it did. Thanks to all law enforcement involved, everybody worked together, and we ended up with a peaceful resolution. Things went very well. Pleased with all the law enforcement partners. UPD, of course, they initiated the call, got on the scene and got things contained, and then summoned for additional resources, and of course us along with state police, sheriff's office, and generally law enforcement anywhere near Jonesboro responded. So we had a turnout from other state agencies. We had federal officers there, officers from Truman, and some other Greene County officers. So when you have a situation like this go out, we had a large, vast people that responded to the scene, and to get there and take matters in hand as quickly as possible. Now, fortunately, this one, no one was hurt, and that was the best part about it. But it ended in a peaceful resolution, so that was also good. But for us working together, we realized that things gelled together real quick that day. Really didn't have any problems. Trying to get communications amongst that many officers, because typically when you start getting multiple agencies and people don't have the same radio frequency and things like that, you could encounter some problems. But since this situation was contained, we didn't see those problems. So again, things went well.
The Democrat Gazette had an editorial about it after the fact, and quoted one of the students as calling his dad and telling his dad told him to get off campus, and he said, "Dad, there's police everywhere. I'm probably the safest person in Arkansas right now."
Probably was. Typically situations like that, if you get in place, lock in place, just listen to the radio and your alerts, they'll instruct you as to what's going on. But if the situation is actually occurring in your building, we want you to get out of there as quickly as possible. But once it was contained, then we just asked everybody to stay in place on campus until it was resolved, because the individual was in a vehicle and could have very easily gone mobile. So this situation could have moved to another location very easily, but we were prepared to contain it just to where it was at.
Chief, walk us through the incident. When did you get the first notice, and what did you do as a result?
Well, I heard the radio call go out for ASU is requesting assistance to block entrances onto the campus. They had a situation going on. And I called dispatch to try to get further, because it kind of caught my attention that they have an incident and why they want us to block entrances to the campus. And then one of our interns, who's a student at ASU, came and said, "Hey, there's an active shooter alert going off on the ASU student phone system." So I didn't hang around and question anything else. I ran out of the building and jumped in the vehicle and responded along with everybody else in my building on Caraway that was there, the detectives and everybody else in the city. Once it was put out, we have a active shooter on campus. Every officer I had responded, and the call went out, from there. From the time I left the building and got to the campus, the vehicle that I was driving was one of the K9 units and had a video camera. So I ended up cutting through campus and nosing down to the side of the suspect vehicle within 35 yards from where the suspect was sitting in his vehicle.
That part of the campus is a little difficult to get to now.
It is, but the way the campus is designed, there's not a road system going through the campus, but the sidewalks through the campus are wide enough for vehicles. And they're also wide enough for fire trucks and any other large pieces of equipment we need to get through the campus. And they're built where they will withstand that kind of weight. So I knew that the sidewalk system and the layout of the campus, so once I came over the Marion Berry overpass, I knew exactly from where the information was being relayed where he was at. And at this point, coming through campus, I had people signaling me, and pointing that, he was down in front of the lawn. So when I pulled up and stopped and assessed the situation, I could see him out of the vehicle on the lawn. Then I eased down the hill through the grass with my vehicle and then squared off with him. And there were officers already on scene that really didn't have much cover because it's pretty much open area. So one of them used this vehicle as a little bit of cover while we're trying to address and deal with this individual. So that's where I ended up. And once we got other officers in place and everything was contained, then I left that position and went back up the hill and got with other officers, and we began setting up command. And at this point, Chief Martin with ASU PD and Dr. Hudson and other ASU officials were there, and things started getting put together, and my SWAT team was arriving, and they were gearing up because we were going to turn this situation over to the tactical unit. During the response, the sheriff's office had their armored vehicle. They got it and brought it to the scene. So once the vehicle got in place and the SWAT team got in place, they loaded up in the vehicle and moved out on the lawn up to this vehicle because one, the guy's armed, and two, he had a propane tank in the back, and we're not sure if he was threatening to try to blow that up or not. So given that scenario, we wanted all the protection we could get for our officers, so this armored vehicle certainly played a key factor in that. Once we got the vehicle in place, one of my negotiators began to talk to the individual and subsequently talked him into surrendering, and he was taken into custody. So a little over an hour after the first call come in, the suspect was into custody, and all ended well.
From all reports, the various agencies worked well together to handle the situation.
It was. It went very well. Very pleased with everybody's response and actions because, once we get the inside of the perimeter contained, we still had to have officers working the outer perimeter. You got traffic issues, then so it took all these extra officers to kind of help out, outside what's going on. But the main thing is when you have an active shooter situation, we're going to put everything we got to stop that shooting if it was that kind of situation. Everything we have is going to go in and stop that shooter and get that neutralized. So that was the intent, and that was our first focus, is to get on the shooter as quickly as possible. Of course, we didn't know if he'd already shot or not. We just had this information that shots had been fired, and which were still unconfirmed. But that's the way it came out, so that's the way we handled the situation, responded to the situation.
Let's talk about your first year as chief. One of the first things you were tasked with was to move into a new building. How's that going?
New building's great. It's a little too small, but we had a free building. Used to be the Reserve Center, and the city went in and did a remodel on it. What we do have in there is very nice. We're very proud of it. But the police department still fragmented in other buildings. We still have part of the department in the building we moved out of, and then the old city hall across the parking lot houses the patrol division. So we're a large department. I have 159 sworn officers, and by the time you add the civilian staff, that takes up a lot of space. So the building on Caraway houses the administration, the criminal investigation division, the evidence division, the ICAC division, the internet, which is the Internet Crimes Against Children, and then our service division. So we did get several things under one roof, but very nice facility. It's a great location. We can respond out of it pretty quickly to any part of the city, as we did the other day on the ASU campus. We're just hit the Marion Berry overpass, and we're right there on it.
But in effect, you've still really got things spread out over the city in two
We
or three
do,
different
and
locations.
it's not necessarily a bad thing because officers also from other buildings, responding along with the ones that are on the street. But until we can get, a large complex built to house the courts and everything else, then, this is the way it's going to be for a while. But hopefully down the road, we'd like to hopefully get everything over on Caraway eventually.
Yeah. One of the interesting things you've done this year is to establish a Citizens Police Academy. Tell us how that's going.
Right. Shortly after I took over, there were a lot of things going on in the country that, caught the attention of law enforcement, or law enforcement getting, negative publicity because of various things. And, I realized long before I took over that it's very important to have good community relations with your community, because when things go bad, your community will know that you will do the right thing in handling the situation, dealing with the situation, and getting the information out to the public. So this is a concept that's, kind of always been in the back of my mind, and I realize it's been important. So that's one of the first things I did when I took over, is that, hey, we're going to be as transparent as possible and get this information out there. And I thought, what a better way to educate the public is to bring the public in on the Citizen Police Academy and kind of give them the exposure of what the police department does. This is not a new concept on our behalf. Other agencies across the country have done this in the past, but I thought this would be a great community relations builder with the community. And at the time, when I moved in, Sergeant Cassie Brandon was in a supervisor school in Little Rock, and she was doing a paper on Citizen Police Academy. I said, well, this is kind of ironic, because I was wanting to start one. So I said, therefore, when you get through with the school, you will come back and put this project together and oversee it. And what she has done, and has done a great job. So in January of this year, we held the first Citizen Police Academy. We had 33 students, and it was a very diverse group. We had black, white, Hispanic, male, female, young, old. But for the course, we started out and we just gave them a sample of every aspect of what policing's all about. I started the first night out talking about the administration and how the police department is set up, and just went over all the rank structure, things like that, and then just continued on. We talked about patrol, the canines, the SWAT, just everything's involved in policing. And then various classes, they got to experience working crime scenes. We'd set up a mock crime scene, and we'd walk the students through on how a crime scene's processed. Because most people think, well, crime scene, Horatio, they show up and less than 15 minutes, they've completed the process and they're back at the PD.
You get the wrong impression on television.
It does, and TV gives the wrong impression to a lot of folks. And there's certain things that they show on TV, certain equipment that just doesn't exist. People think that we're going to take DNA and go back and stick it in a fancy machine, and then 10 seconds we're going to have your picture and your address and all this stuff pop up on a big screen, and those things just don't exist. Yes, we can get DNA, but we have to send it to the state crime lab, and it takes several months to get a response back. So a lot of times the general public just doesn't understand things like that. But again, this is an education process. So students also had a chance to participate in traffic stops. Why we do what we do on a traffic stop, why we park the car in a position that we park the car in, why do we approach the car in the way we approach the car, why do we do these things, so they have a better understanding. We set up scenarios that the students were issued simunition guns that they had a situation of shoot, no shoot, because this is a big topic across the country, Well, police shot this man, he had done something or may have been an unarmed man. And there could be situations that, yes, you are justified shooting an unarmed man based on what has taken place prior to, to the incident, to the shooting. So, just the mere fact that, well, somebody unarmed was shot doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad shoot. So we put these people in this situation and let them realize that, hey, this is how things go and this is how fast things go in this job. We have to make a decision sometimes in just 2 or 3 seconds, and then everybody else will spend days, months, and years going back and analyzing it and say, well, you could have done this, you could have done that. But the reality is we had just a few seconds to make a decision.
What's the percentage of academy people who pass that test?
It was very interesting. We had one lady, our officer was the one that was stopped by this lady, and he took off running, and she pulled the gun and started shooting at him. It's like, oh, wait a minute. Well, why are you shooting at him? Well, he ran. Well, we discussed it. You just can't shoot somebody because he's running, and it's kind of like oh, wow, now I see. So, and everybody in the class is like, oh, okay. So that's what we hope to accomplish. We just kind of open everybody's eyes. And the folks in the class love the class. It's one night a week, and it's 3 hours a night. And there were several nights it would go 4 hours, and nobody complained. They said they would go longer, or they would like to add more time to the whole overall course. But as soon as the first academy was over with, the group of students had gotten so close with each other, they formed an alumni association because, one, they wanted to continue their bond with their friends, but more important, they become ambassadors for the police department. And so they will help out with us on projects. If we need volunteers to doing certain things, they have stepped up to the plate. There have been times we have to do sex offender notification throughout neighborhoods, passing out flyers, and the Academy bunch has stepped up and jumped right in with us to help do things like that. Great bunch of folks. Our second class was this fall, and we finished right before Thanksgiving, and we graduated 31 out of this bunch. And the same thing with them. They immediately turned around and joined the Alumni Association. So now we're at 64 people, yeah, alumni or ambassadors, as I like to call them, that's pro-police and supporting our mission here in Jonesboro.
Your next one is in February, and it's already full.
It is. The word has gotten around about the Academy, how wonderful it is, and the experience, and it is full. What we saw in the first Academy, we had people going home and telling their spouse about what they went through, what they experienced. So the second Academy, we had the other half showing up and taking the class so they could experience the same things. So we had husband and wife teams in both classes, which was good. So we think it has gone very well. We will continue with 2 academies a year until unless things start to slow down, but I don't foresee it slowing down right now. We are looking at maybe a 3rd academy in the summer or a condensed academy, just run, try to knock it out 7 or 8 hours a day in, say, a week. But you're roughly getting about a 40-hour training deal, and just maybe during the summer there's people off, like teachers and things like that, that would have time. If they wanted to attend something like this, they could go through and get it all within a week or 2. So that's something we're thinking about and working on.
Does this fit into what you call community policing?
It does. Which community policing concept has been around for a long time. This is a big concept that the federal government tries to promote and get officers and departments to do across the country because they realize the benefits from community policing. And years ago, Jonesboro fell under this community policing philosophy, and during that time we had several little substations around the city. in which we had volunteers at, but it gave the community a chance to stop by these areas and visit with officers that might be there, from time to time. And during this time, the officers pretty much were assigned the same area to work on a daily basis, so they'd get to know the people and the business owners and things like that. So when they're out on patrol, they know when things are, right or not right. So, and that's the concept with our patrol. We still do. We try to keep them pretty much in the same area most of the time, and so they can learn the people that they're dealing with day to day.
You also have started another academy, which is for your new officers, and certainly that's important too. Explain what you've done there and how that's going.
Right. Typically, we send our officers to the police academy over at Black River, and right now we're having such a shortage of manpower on the street due to I have 16 officers in training, so they're not able to be out on the street just yet because they're in various stages of training, so they're not an asset to us. Then I have several officers that are either out on injury or some kind of medical leave, so they're not an asset to the department. So we're kind of running a little short, and the group of officers that we just hired on December 1st, which there were 7 of them, we realized that if we conducted our own academy, we could get these guys on the road 2 months sooner than we could if we waited to send them to the next academy class in Pocahontas in January. Now, this is not something I don't think we're going to do from now on, but again, we're in a crunch for getting manpower back on the road. So we took the curriculum, had it certified through standards, and therefore this is what we're doing. Again, it's just to get customer service back up to where it should be.
When you hire a new police officer, one who doesn't have any previous experience, they don't just go right to work.
No, it is a long process. The applicant has to start out and pass a written test and a physical test, and then if they pass that, they'll have to go through a background test, and during the background, we go very in depth into a person's background. We'll go back and talk to neighbors, teachers. We want to know that we're getting the best applicant for our department. They'll undergo a polygraph examination. Then if they complete all that, they'll be eligible for an oral interview. Then the interview will consist of a board of the captains of the police department. They'll interview and critique the individuals. Then if they pass that, they'll be placed on an eligibility list. Then, so that process alone takes several months to get to. Problem that law enforcement is having across the country is just there's a lack of desire for applicants to want to do this job. I guess people turn on the news every day and see how police, it's constantly in the news. A lot of times it's in the negative light, and they just say, why would I want to subject myself to this for this amount of pay? So therefore, we don't. Used to, on each testing cycle, we'd have over 100 applicants. And this past testing cycle, we had less than 50. And out of that 50, we only ended up with 11 going into the oral interviews. Everybody else was either washed out on the physical, written, or the background. So it takes a lot to get a little bit to interview. But again, yes, we're very picky. We're not going to put somebody on the road just to be filling the seat. We want somebody that's going out here and be able to do the job and confident to do the job, protect the citizens of Jonesboro. So it is a very tough process, and we are very thorough in what we do.
By the time that new officer gets his first assignment, his or her first assignment, the city has quite an investment.
We do. You're looking about roughly 8 months of time that he's received a salary and gone through training, and so from the day you hire in until you actually get in the car on your own, it's close to 8 months. So it's not a quick process. Now, there are other agencies out there that they don't go through all this. They'll hire somebody in, a little bit of training, or they may get just the academy alone, and then they're out. But we feel that we go above and beyond what's the minimum requirement is, because, again, we want our officers to be trained to our standards.
And what can you do, and what have you tried to do to keep those officers once they're on duty?
Well, right now we've gone to the city and say, hey, we have a problem with starting salary. Our department, salary-wise, we're not competitive with some of the same cities our size. So we've asked the city to look at the salary range. There's some compression issues in our salary structure, the way it's set up, and right now I've got some new guys that are hiring in, and they're making close to what a guy that's been here 5 years is making. So that's kind of some issues that we're having, and hopefully will be addressed with the city. The city has set up a salary survey committee, and they're meeting regular on this to work out a plan to try to deal with longevity and compression within the structure. But the plan is going to be for the citywide. It's not just the police department. They're wanting to adopt this plan for the whole city. But when you're in any industry, you have to stay competitive to what is out there in the other job market. So we have to look at what pay and things like that. As far as equipment, I would say we have better equipment than any agency our size in the state of Arkansas or this part of the country. Our cars, we don't have cars that are real old. We get replaced cars sooner than a lot of agencies. I've seen cars in some of the bigger cities that are literally falling apart, and when we get to that point in the vehicles, we'll get rid of them just because they can turn into a maintenance nightmare. So other equipment that we have that we issue the officers, again, I think we go above and beyond most agencies. We'll cover officers pretty much anything you see them wearing, except socks, underwear, and T-shirt, we're going to outfit them with. So all their uniform equipment and leather gear, tasers and radios and guns, things like that, is provided by the city. So when you stop and look at what it costs, per officer, it gets expensive. And it's a big investment on the city, so therefore the person that we're hiring in, this is another reason why we screen the way we do, because we want the best applicant that we can get to fill the slot.
The bottom line, as far as the citizens are concerned, is what kind of impact can you have on crime, stopping crime? Before we run out of time, I wanted to mention that you presented a report to the City Council for its second December meeting. And without getting into statistics, what basically impact have you seen over your year or so?
Right. Well, actually, crime is down 14%, so that's something we're proud of. But we can attribute that to the fact that, one, have officers out doing proactive policing, and two, we have the community much more involved in what we do on a daily basis. And we're still encouraging people, if you see something, to call it in. And that's something we've been constantly trying to get out there. It's your community too. And as a citizen, you should feel obligated to, if you suspect crime going on, to give us a phone call so we can get out and address it and deal with it. And those that have had, then the end result is we clear up cases. So everybody working together, we can do things like keeping crime down or reduce crime. We run crime stats. I have two analysts that take our crime numbers and basically all of our statistics in the police department, and they do weekly and monthly reports. And we'll utilize these reports on working shifts, daily and weekly. We'll look at the areas where the hot spots are, the trouble areas, and then we'll concentrate additional manpower to those areas. So sometimes they may move from one section of the city to the other, because it seems like we put a lot of officers in this section because it became hot, then things kind of go over here. So it's kind of back and forth, but that's biggest way we have to manage what's going on. But it is effective.
Chief, thank you for what you do and for taking time to be with us. Thank you, viewers, for watching. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.